Ah, the internet. I'll never forget using the internet for the first time back in 1997. The World Wide Web was a relatively new phenomenon, thus it was very limited. The most you could do on America Online was chat with friends, email, maybe play a couple of crappy games or read a few articles, but that was about it. Shit, I remember it taking forever to simply download one picture.
Lace, the final brassiere. Oh, hurry up, I'm a busy man. High-speed modem is intolerably slow. Hey, what the... the Internet King. I wonder if he can provide faster nudity.
Nonetheless, the internet was pretty cool. My dad paid $20 a month for dial-up 56 kilobyte per second broadband. At the time, I was like, wow, this internet thing is really cool. It should be nationalized by the government. It belongs to the people. Everyone has a right to use the internet.
That's ridiculous!
Alright, time to revisit net neutrality by tackling some dumb arguments I've seen lately. Net neutrality means that corporations can't manipulate or censor your pornography. Really? Corporations are going to decide how much porn you get to watch? So let's give the FCC more power over the internet. You know, the same regulatory agency that determined that obscene material such as pornography is about the only thing that cannot be broadcasted over the airwaves, along with profane language, of course. Let me remind you government-worshipping weasels that it was the FCC that fined CBS and MTV for Janet Jackson's boob popping out during the Super Bowl.
And I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. B-O-O-Z-E or B-O-O-B-S? Because as a woman, I'm
As in boobs. I believe completely in the First Amendment and in boobs. Those are the only two things I believe 100% in this country.
The same FCC whose indecency and profanity standards intimidated broadcasters and artists for decades. So much so that even cable networks tiptoed the line until South Park came around. But it's the big corporations you can't trust. No, we need the FCC to fight these big internet service providing corporations on behalf of little guys like Netflix and Amazon and Facebook and Google. Has anyone considered the idea that net neutrality might be a play by big corporations like Google and Netflix seeking protectionist legislation from the government? But again, is it corporations that want to censor your pornography or the government? The FCC is pretty clear about prohibiting pornography on broadcast television and radio because, after all, those are public forums. The kind of forum that you net neutrality nerds are trying to make the internet into. Speaking of which, check out this gem. Nationalize the internet. Is this America or Nazi Germany? Ironic that a Facebook page called Americans Against Fascism is endorsing fascistic tactics. Okay, so big internet got about $400 billion in subsidies. On the other hand, according to the FCC, ISPs have invested $1.5 trillion of their own money over the last 20 years. So what, just because ISPs have accepted taxpayer dollars, the government gets to tell them what to do and take over their business? By this same logic, the government gets to tell anyone who has ever accepted food stamps how to eat for the rest of their lives. Yeah, you see how ridiculous this all sounds? And then we have these memes floating around. Oh no, guys, if we don't force restaurants to serve some sort of buffet, then some restaurants may force you to pick off a menu instead. First off, my internet bill is around $75 a month, and thanks to local regulators, some competitors are locked out of my area. Nonetheless, according to these memes, I would actually pay less for internet. Even in this meme right here, the combined services cost 3 cents less than the total package in the exact same meme. Secondly, wouldn't this scenario actually be better for poor people? What if someone can't afford the $75 monthly internet buffet, but can afford a package that just allows streaming and social media for, say, $30 a month? All this babbling about throttling. The ISP on Southwest Airlines doesn't allow streaming. Oh no, guys, everyone call the internet police. The proper role of government is to protect individual rights and property rights. I think the FCC does have a role in establishing property rights over IP addresses, airwave frequencies, domain names, and what have you. Maybe they can properly define terms like libel, slander, and defamation, but that's about all I want the FCC doing. The last thing I want the FCC to do is to declare the internet a public utility or a public forum. On what grounds? The internet was barely a commercial industry 2 decades ago, and now suddenly everyone has an inherent right to use it? This is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. You can't have a natural right to internet access because the internet does not exist in nature. It only exists after humans work to produce it. And the notion that you have a right to someone else's labor is called slavery, which thankfully was abolished by the 13th Amendment. It's like what I said in my video about why socialism won't go away. Listen to all of these arguments. The people who want net neutrality enforced by law have a pessimistic view of people and reality. They don't trust corporations to behave in a free market. And since they prioritize the collective over the individual, they think that the internet belongs to the community. Or to the people, which begs a good question. If corporations can't be trusted with freedom, then why should you? I don't want the FCC declaring the internet a public utility or a public forum, much like what they did with radio and television for decades. Further, it's not the government's job to enforce fairness in the marketplace. Who determines what's fair and what isn't fair? Conservatives are already demanding that Google and Facebook be regulated the same way, as a public utility or a public forum. Many conservatives feel that they have been silenced and treated unfairly by Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. How is this premise any different from net neutrality? If you think that corporations should treat all information and all players equally and therefore are not allowed to discriminate or charge for more eyeballs, then shouldn't Facebook, Google, and Twitter be held to the same standards? Why is it okay for Twitter to shut down Milo Yiannopoulos and YouTube suppress Prager University, but not okay for Comcast to throttle Netflix? I myself have been prohibited from boosting my own content on Facebook and Twitter to reach more people. How is this different from Comcast charging Netflix to reach more people, or at&t charging people to access FaceTime? Again, FaceTime wasn't even a thing 10 years ago, so why does everyone suddenly have a right to use it? And if the internet is merely a means of delivering information, then shouldn't ISPs reserve the right to charge for bigger and better service? If I go to FedEx and want to ship a 50-inch flat screen TV across the country overnight, that will and should cost a lot more than standard shipping my grandma a Christmas card who lives 10 miles away. If Netflix wants to send HD movies to their subscribers in an instant, then ISPs should reserve the right to charge more for that delivery than they would a 16-word email.
Here I go once again with the email. Every week I hope that it's from a female. Oh man, it's not from a female.
Whether the reasoning behind net neutrality is noble or not, you have to consider the possibility that future politicians can and will use such legislation and premises for nefarious purposes. Everyone wants to trust the FCC and the government with running the internet than big corporations, even though the FCC has a long history of corruption and sticking their nose where it does not belong. Be careful for what you wish for, people. I'm for an open and fair internet, but I'm also stubborn about property rights. You have a right to say what you want, but you don't have a right to a platform.